welcome to LTV News. I'm Rudina Hatibi and these are the day's top stories. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas hints he has no right of return to home in Israel.
Now and forever.
Kurds in Syria protest against school closures. And Russian officials open a 10-year-long slavery case in Moscow. Let's start with some news from the Middle East. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas made a rare, if symbolic, concession to Israel yesterday, saying he had no permanent claim on the town from which he was driven as a child during the 1948 war of the Jewish state's founding. One of the main disputes deadlocking Middle East peace talks has been over the Palestinians' demand that as many as 5 million of their compatriots be granted the right to return to lands that they lost to Israel as refugees. Israel rules this out.
But I want to see someone. It's my right to see it, but not to live there.
Okay. But this is Palestine for you. It's Palestine.
Palestine now for me is 6-7 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. This is now and forever.
Saudi Health Minister Abdullah Al-Rabia visited King Saud Hospital yesterday to meet the victims who were injured in an explosion that hit the capital, Riyadh. At least 22 people were killed when a fuel truck crashed into a flyover in the Saudi capital. The impact triggered an explosion that brought down an industrial building and torched nearby vehicles. Al-Rabia said that the patients will receive the best treatment.
Today we had the tragic incident that has happened with many actually injuries that has occurred in Riyadh because of explosion of gas tank that has overlapped in the highway, and they have been distributed to 11 hospitals, and we have been directed by the custodian to holy mosques and the Crown Prince to convey our sympathy to them and also hoping that they will get well soon.
Around 1,000 Syrian Kurds protested in the northeastern Syrian town of Derek yesterday, demanding the reopening of Kurdish language schools they said were closed by the President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Women, men, and students took part in the demonstration, which was organized by the Kurdish Democratic Society movement, carrying pictures and flags of Abdullah Öcalan, the Kurdish leader of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. Kurds have often complained of discrimination and have for many years called for the creation of an independent state. Israeli opposition leader Shaul Mofaz said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is obsessed by a messianic belief to bomb Iran. In a news conference near Tel Aviv, he branded Netanyahu's right-wing party and Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman's common hardline faction as very dangerous for Israel's future. Mofaz unveiled a poster of a flaming mushroom cloud with reading in Hebrew saying, "Netanyahu will mire us in trouble." Using language that echoed warnings months ago by another of Israel's former security chiefs, Mofaz said Netanyahu and Lieberman were driven by a messianic belief to bomb Iran. Israel sees a mortal threat in the prospect of an Iranian nuclear bomb. Moving on now to world news. Russia's investigative committee began looking into a case of migrant women claiming to have been held as slaves in a Moscow basement for the past 10 years. The story emerged after the kidnapping of 3 children was reported to Moscow officials. The children were allegedly taken from a grocery store. They were later found, but a man calling himself an activist said 2 women being held as slaves were also found at the grocery store, located underneath an apartment building. Video taken by activist Danila Medvedev showed a woman from Central Asia at the grocery store crying and hugging another woman after journalists and activists stormed the store. The activist said the case was just one of many incidents of slavery in Russia. Indian Finance Minister Palaniappan Chidambaram met his South Korean counterpart Bak Jae-won in Seoul today. The two ministers discussed pending economic issues and future economic cooperation. Later in the day, the two ministers are expected to sign a memorandum of understanding seeking greater collaborations between the two countries. Chidambaram said the talks would strengthen relations between the nations.
Today's discussions will be mutually beneficial and further strengthen the relations between our two countries. Thank you.
Residents of Staten Island in New York said they have had enough of Hurricane Sandy and are frustrated by the slow pace of emergency assistance efforts. Police said the number of dead in New York City rose to 40. At least 20 of the city's dead were found on Staten Island, whose southeast flank took the full brunt of the storm surge. The Red Cross said it was sending in 10 vehicles with food and water. However, many feel it's still not enough.
The city of New York right now is talking about getting water out of the Battery Tunnel and preparing for a marathon. We're pulling bodies out of water. You see the disconnect here?
I want to go home, but there's no home. I can't go home, and that's killing me. It's breaking my heart. I want to go home to my house.
Ukraine's jailed former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko will continue her hunger strike she launched earlier this week. She started the hunger strike to protest against alleged vote rigging in favor of President Viktor Yanukovych's party in the weekend elections. Exit polls and partial results from Sunday's vote showed Yanukovych's Party of the Regions would, with help from longtime allies, win more than half of the seats in the 450-member assembly. A court last October sentenced Tymoshenko, 51, to 7 years in prison, ruling she had abused her powers as prime minister when she forced through a 2009 gas deal with Russia. Now here's some finance news. The Brazilian company Marco Polo, one of the world's top bus manufacturers, together with around 100 other Brazilian companies, will touch down in Cuba next week to discuss doing business on the communist island. Business dealings between Cuba and Brazil are now on the rise and should be around $1 billion for 2012. Hipólito Roca, the director of Apex Brazil, said the bus manufacturer is planning on making bus bodies in Cuba, where the U.S. trade embargo has made it hard to modernize their fleet. Roca also stated they will make a sizable investment in Cuba's stagnant economy. Consumer confidence and private sector jobs data gave investors reasons to cheer following Superstorm Sandy's devastating sweep through the U.S. Northeast, as the Standard & Poor's 500 scored its best day in 7 weeks yesterday. About 6.7 billion shares changed hands on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, compared with the average daily closing volume of 6.5 billion for the year to date. Volume had been expected to jump after Sandy forced a historic 2-day market closure earlier in the week, but traders said participation remained light to normal. The numbers showed a slightly more positive picture of the U.S. economy just ahead of today's non-farm payrolls report, the most widely watched U.S. economic indicator. Now for some sports news. Thousands of people participated in the annual boat race in Kollam City in southern India today. The event was organized at the Asramam Creek of the Ashtamudi Lake. Large numbers of locals gathered at the riverside to support their favorite teams. Around 58 boats of various categories participated in the race, among which 18 were snake boats. People were seen cheering and supporting their respective teams. The first boat race was held here in 1952 to honor the first Prime Minister of India, who was on a trip to the States. Lending prestige to the race, ace Indian tennis player Sania Mirza inaugurated the event.
The Honorable President last year inaugurated it, so thank you for the honor. And I think I'd love to come back here for a holiday one day. I now declare the President's Trophy Boat Trade 2012 open.
Swazani Omar is one of the thousands of fans who wishes to witness the wedding of Malaysia's most celebrated athlete. Olympic badminton silver medalist Lee Chang-wei and his fiancée will handpick the 10 most creative comments of Lee's Facebook page to attend their wedding reception. The competition has triggered feverish online traffic as Lee's Facebook page is flooded with supporters' comments explaining why they wish to attend. The chosen few will be able to rub shoulders with celebrities and government dignitaries, but nothing is more important to Swazani than to be able to personally deliver her blessing. Now for a quick look at the world of arts. Russian fashion designer Konstantin Gaydey presented his new collection of extravagant hats yesterday, inspired by the Russian fairy tales. Gaydey, who in the past few years has established his brand and secured a spot in Russia's high-end boutiques, said it took him years to make his latest collection called 12, which consists of just 12 hats. Using a combination of rare materials to create hats, feathers of various birds, fur, leather, precious and semi-precious stones, he hopes to contribute to the establishment of the Russian haute couture and fashion business. Gaydey's 12 collection received an enthusiastic welcome from the Moscow audience. And finally, Apple Mania strikes again as dozens of people were queuing outside the Apple store in Sydney's city centre early this morning to be among the first to buy the new mini iPad. Weighing 308 grams and with 7.9-inch screen, the iPad mini is light and thin and can easily be held in one hand. While it is too big for a top pocket, it will fit into a handbag. The mini has a mix of new and old iPad features. It has Apple's new Lightning connector used for charging the iPad and linking to a computer, and the cellular versions use the same smaller nano SIM card found on the iPhone 5. Although numbers at stores were lower than expected, many were happy with the product. That's all we have time for today, but before we go, let's take a look back at today's headlines. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas hints he has no right of return to home in Israel. Kurds in Syria protest against school closures. And Russian officials open a 10-year-long slavery case in Moscow. Thank you for watching. For more of today's news, visit our website, levant.tv. Do join us tomorrow at the same time. From all of us here at the LTV team, goodbye.